YouTube? This is Jeff with Lag.
We're live, bro! Ho-ho!
Alright, I like that. I like that a lot.
We should make nice
Excellent.
Alright.
How does it sound?
So, I've been having this thought process recently about, maybe you guys hear about how people talk about how video games aren't what they were, or that video games aren't as good as they used to be, or something like that. And I just recently had an epiphany that curtailed in my mind that kind of leads to why the discussion's happening, and that pretty much stems essentially from a problem with my generation and the next generation. So we're talking about millennials versus Gen Zers, Gen Y versus Gen Z, Centennials. And it's not your fault, Centennials. I need to preface that by saying that. It's not your fault, we caused it. But there's a lot of explanation that needs to begin with it. The first being that there are many of you who are in the next generation who don't know what it's like to game without being online with someone. Alright? So when we have that, we have a situation where if you're from my generation, or Jeff's, or Michael's, or to some extent Nick's and Eunice's, but really it's the older of the three of us, when we gamed together, we had to be at each other's house. And if you say something like you say to someone on League or Fortnite or any of those other games, back then you were saying it to someone who was sitting in the same room with you. And you can't really get away with someone calling someone a jackass cunt fact, you know. You can't do that because they're there with you. Blows are going to come. Alright? I'm not saying that's a bad thing now. I'm just saying, hear me out. Eventually, there was, well, I'll start back. Like, even with old school gaming on like when gaming got good on the NES, like, you have these old games that we're very nostalgic about, like Super Mario Bros., Mega Man, the older Zeldas, and then even on to like Nintendo 64 and PlayStation, like Final Fantasy, Ocarina of Time, where we got immense amount of time hours out of. Now, understand, we don't get those same time hours out anymore because technology is performed. We don't have a problem with that. The problem occurs when, and this is where I'll say something that I think really matters. No, there's still more history, actually. So, there was this game on Nintendo 64 that was a better multiplayer game than it was a single-player game. And that game was GoldenEye. Alright? That is a game you played with 3 of your buddies in your living room together. Way more than you played it by yourself. I'm sure there's other people who have actually beaten the game and stuff like that, but really no one cared about that. Everyone cared about playing it together. Much in the same way, eventually Call of Duty came about. Modern Warfare. That was the big one. I enjoyed it with my friends. Never owned the game personally, but I'd go to friends' houses and we played it, and you know, you have good times or whatever. But there's never a toxicity there, because again, you're sitting next to these people, and if you did that, you're not friends. If one of my friends, my close friends, called me a terrible thing while I'm sitting next to him, at the very least, I'm not going to be friends with him. At the worst, it's going to come to something awful, right? So, that's essentially where the disconnect comes.